Video marketing is all the rage these days, but for so many nonprofits, it's a huge hassle and a huge challenge. People know they should be doing it, but creating video content in the first place is super difficult. It's time consuming. It takes a lot of resources. And then when you actually manage to do it, which is an accomplishment in itself, it falls flat and it doesn't resonate with your target audience and it doesn't get you to the goals that you're looking for. That is so frustrating, to say the least, as anyone who's been in that situation knows. What's even more frustrating is that that video has the power to be a really impactful tool in your organization. You can generate impact for your team, for your stakeholders, to engage donors and supporters. But when you can't crack the code, man, that's just, you're leaving money on the table. So we are here to help. I'm joined by my friend Emma Parker. She's a freelance video editor and motion designer for social impact brands. Also, Alt Marketing School just named her one of the top 100 trailblazers of 2023, something like that. Not jealous at all. Together, we're going to share some common pitfalls and best practices for using video to bring your stories to life in a nonprofit, plus how to easily integrate video into your digital strategy, whether you've been doing it for a little while or you're just getting started. That way you can reach new audiences and drive more impact. Emma, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about your work and why it's important.
Yeah, thanks so much, Zach. I really appreciate it. So I'm Emma Parker. As Zach mentioned, I am a video editor and motion designer. I've been freelancing since 2018, and I've worked with a lot of brands, from grant-funded projects for like really cool trainings with like the Michigan Victims Advocacy Network to more for-profit brands, especially in the HR and mental health spaces. I'm just an Adobe nut. I use about 10 of their applications on a daily basis. And I'm also a cat mom, and she will probably pop in here at some point during the recording.
That's what we are really here for. I love it. Cool. The way I want to start off is that, I experience this a lot. Maybe you do too. This happened to me this week where I was talking to a client of mine and they were working on some things in my marketing. And they're like, Zach, I feel like I'm the only one who can't figure this out. And I was like, no, I promise you, this is so common. And so I just want to start by, first of all, letting people know that they're not alone, and kind of covering some common mistakes and common problems we see when it comes to video marketing as a whole. So what are some common mistakes that you see when it comes to video marketing? What does that look like in your work?
Yeah. So like a big mistake that I see is like everybody says, especially like I look over a ton of project briefs and everybody's like, we want to go viral. We want to be like the next big thing. We want to da 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 da. And the problem with this idea of like, oh, I want to go viral on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you might get a lot of views, but views don't always convert to actually solving your goals. So a big issue that I see is people not actually understanding why they want to make a video. So is it like, if you're a nonprofit, are you raising awareness about something? Is this something you're trying to educate people on? In that case, getting a lot of views might be a good idea, but you also want to focus on your shares and your saves. Another one is, are you looking for donor money? Because a lot of people watching your video, but nobody donating, those are just vanity metrics. And what you really want to focus on is building sustainable content. And a lot of times that is about looking at your viewer metrics. The cool thing about a lot of social media platforms right now, everything from YouTube to TikTok to Instagram, you can really dig into like, when is it people are popping out of your videos? Is it like 2 minutes in? Like I noticed, so I make little teeny vlogs on a regular basis. And I noticed that if I turned the camera around, and I have a tendency to talk, that's something that I do a lot of. And I noticed that if I talked for more than 15 seconds about something, my viewers were just popping off. And so I was like, I need to say my point in 5 seconds and then jump out. I also noticed that if my partner came in and my cat was in the videos, that my engagement went way up. So it's really figuring out how to build that like sustainable viewer base of people that really like what you're doing, instead of just focusing on like, how can I get, millions of views on this video, but not actually building a sustainable viewer base.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing. I mean, for people who are like, oh my God, they're already talking about project briefs and analytics, we'll circle back to that, not as hard as it sounds.
Yeah, sorry.
I know that's one thing I noticed about getting into YouTube, is that analytics you have in that engagement curve is like so useful. You can see exactly where people drop off or where people are interested, where people are rewinding because they want to hear that again. And that is so valuable when we're figuring out what is it that we have to say? What kind of things can we say that are going to resonate and hit with the market? Such valuable information. Yeah, other things I see, like when videos are overly long, like you said, or like maybe your partner comes in, your cat comes in, engagement goes up, something's overly long, or you're confusing, engagement will go down, right? These are all really like things we might not always think about, but that are just like really simple and that really have a lot of results. Is there anything else in terms of what you feel like ineffective marketing looks like when you're working with your clients or when you're watching TV, anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah. A big thing is just, I think I like to say, like, thinking about how you want people to feel when they're watching it and like telling a story with heart. Um, I like it's something that's like it's so out there, but I think the idea behind it, and what I encourage my clients to do a lot of times, is to start small. So instead of like, we're going to make this massive video campaign and spend, because video, like, the other thing to realize is that video is really expensive if you're going to hire someone to do video, or if you're going to get like a really good camera, if you're going to do all these things. And a lot of people want to jump in that deep end and go like spend a lot of money on a problem that they think is going to fix. And a lot of times the more effective way to do that is actually like get a couple of your team members to just film little selfie videos on their phone. Jump into that shallow end and just experiment and play around with it and create stuff with heart and create stuff that makes you happy and makes you feel good, makes your team feel good. Look at how your viewers are interacting with it and what's making them feel good. And that's just a way better way of looking at it than this giant top down, we're just going to dump, you know, a ton of money into this one giant video project and then be really disappointed when it flops.
Yeah, we see this a lot with I say it a lot with copy, with your website copy, with emails. It's like people can feel the energy that comes through it. And with video, I mean, they literally see you, they're literally hearing you. That is amplified like 10 times at least. And so if you are freaking out about how to work all your equipment, or, you know, if you're stressed out that this is expensive and you really, really need it to work, people are going to feel that. But if you just pull out your phone, tell an authentic story, you know, communicate enthusiasm from yourself, people feel that as well. And I mean, I think that there's probably something that's going to hit better anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely going to hit better. And also just like it's a muscle that you have to build. Like for me, I have always been way more comfortable behind the camera than in front of the camera. And so for me, whenever I have to do marketing stuff, I always get really like, you know, I can see it in my face, I can see it in my shoulders, and it's just this muscle that you have to build if that's something you want to incorporate, or just make the decision that, you know, maybe one team member is really good at recording themselves and putting their heart out there, and maybe the other one isn't as good, and that's okay, and figuring out where your strengths are and just building slowly. The nice thing is, because most people have phones, most people have access to the internet, that right now it's so accessible to do video that like it doesn't have to be this giant, big, scary thing. It can just be, we're going to have, you know, Sally, who's really engaging, post every day on TikTok what she's doing in her work. And that might build a following from there to get people interested in your nonprofit.
Sweet. I love that. When it comes to these common mistakes, why do you feel like they're common in the first place? And what is it about them that leads to poor results?
I think it's a couple things. I think one, people are just, including me, I am people. We're just obsessed with like, we want like one quick fix, you know, we want, if our elbow hurts, we want to take that pain pill and we want it to go away. And I think we come at our creative strategy. I know I can do this in my own business with like, oh, if I just hire someone to take care of this one aspect of my business that's been bothering me, obviously it's going to fix everything. The other thing is that technology, I don't think we've fully, I haven't fully caught up with how fast technology's progressed. Where like when I was in school, I didn't have a smartphone when I first went to college. I had a little flip phone. There was no way, if I wanted to make a good video, I had to go out and spend I think it was $800 on my first camera as a sophomore, and to actually get worse quality footage than you can now get on an iPhone. And I don't think people have fully like caught up with the fact that you can get really high quality 4K footage on the average phone that people have in the Western world, and actually anywhere. And you don't need all this equipment, but it's hard to mentally shift. I know I have had trouble mentally shifting and being like, I have this gear for really high quality video projects, but in my day-to-day work, I just whip out my cell phone and turn it around, and that's what I use.
Yeah, for sure. I think something video specific that holds a lot of people back, especially budget constrained nonprofits, is like, you just have limited resources and you're like, I can't sink all this money into all this equipment and the studio and lighting, and you don't need to just stand in front of a window, go outside with your iPhone, right?
And yeah, and honestly, people are really burned out by overproduced videos. Like I can say without a doubt, like I will work with organizations that want to do these really highly produced videos. And I have to reel myself back and I have to reel them back because we've gotten so used to being advertised to that people's guards kind of go up if they see like, I can tell that's a really good camera. Like I can tell, and if it, especially if it doesn't have that heart behind it, especially if you don't have someone who's really great on camera, like people's alarm bells go off and they disengage. Where sometimes like the really poorly produced little selfie video performs way better than this highly produced studio video. The one caution I will say is if you're going to prioritize video quality or audio quality, try to focus on your audio quality. Because as much as people might have patience with like a little bit of a grainy video, people don't have patience with like road noise, or if you're in an area with a really loud hum, or if it's really echoey, people get tired of that quicker than they'll get tired of poor video.
That's a super great tip. We'll circle back at the end as well as to, just the best practices and tips like that. But yeah, I think that's another kind of common thing you see is so much focus on the visual. I mean, obviously video is a visual medium, but there's more to it than that. And at a deeper level, right, it's things like the audio and even just like the story that we're telling and our own energy, those things can be way more important than is this 4K or 1080p.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
A few other things I want to mention here for people listening is that video marketing isn't necessarily different than our other forms of marketing, right? All of our forms of marketing are just ways of holding up a microphone for what we have to say. And so if you don't properly understand your audience, even if you tell a great story or you put together a message, like it might not resonate with your target audience because you kind of missed what the target was in the first place. If your messaging is overly complex or confusing, you've got multiple messages going on, people aren't going to take action. We always say in marketing, a confused mind always says no. And so if people are confused, like you could have shot, a Hollywood movie, but it's not going to have the results that people need. And of course, if you don't go out and promote, it's kind of one of those, if they build it, they'll come. No, they won't kind of things. If you fail to promote that video, just like any other kind of marketing, it's not going to reach enough of the right people or the right people at all. And I know something that you and I connected on is our approach being strengths-based. Strengths-based communication is something that for some people feels like a buzzword, and for some people they've never heard of it. So tell me in your words, like, what is it and why is it critical for people who want to communicate a message of empowerment?
Yeah, so strengths-based is the idea basically, I'm going to use an example of a past client of mine, the Michigan Victims Advocacy Network. So with my van, we were working to train advocates to work with survivors of violent crimes. And one thing that was really, really important to us was not to, when you're working with survivors of violent crimes, and this is all goes into anyway, a whole bunch of trauma-informed training and everything that we don't need to get into right now. But it was really important to us that we don't show these survivors in a way that re-traumatizes people that are watching it, or in a way that makes them look like victims. We were very, very particular in the script that we said survivors, not victims of violent crimes. And it creates a sense of hope in people, and it helps the people that you're helping actually feel included. The bummer is with a lot of old models of nonprofits, and I don't see as many people doing this anymore. They would use these, like the sad image of the puppy and, oh, won't you donate to this puppy? And that can work to motivate people to an extent, but if you're not showing these hopeful messages of like, look at what a lovely life this puppy can live, and especially if you're dealing with human beings and they're then feeling like, this person might be helping me, this person might be giving me money or resources, but they're also kind of using me and using my pain as a way to market themselves. It excludes the people that you're trying to help. And it's really, really unfortunate. And it also creates this like savior complex that can have some really negative downstream effects. So just, that's kind of my mentality around it. And it's kind of hard to put a finger on sometimes.
For sure. I think something I hear in my conversations with people, and I think it's kind of a broader cultural conversation happening, is how do we take, out of philanthropy, out of international development, things like that, how do we take away kind of patriarchal models or colonial models? And when you say like this fear-based messaging can oftentimes create the savior complex, well, we have to wonder why, right? And I think, you touched on something else as well, is that like there are times in our messaging and our marketing where it is appropriate and necessary to communicate what's at stake and to touch on the pain that people are feeling, because it is very real and it does need to be acknowledged. But overall, what we're doing in our messaging, especially with strengths-based communication, is like telling a story of transformation and the transformation that's possible. And like you said, the hope that comes with that. And so if we focus on the abilities and the strengths and the assets that communities already have, it's like, okay, there is potential here for the growth and the transformation. It's not just, I need to come in and solve this problem for these people with the money that I have as a more privileged person. Right?
Yeah. And it's just such a shift in thinking through, because I think the biggest thing when working with people who have less privilege is like, people know how to help themselves. They just like, I love, I don't know if you've ever heard Trevor Noah has the thing where he's like, you teach a man to fish or you give a man a fish. And he's like, you could teach a man to fish all you want, but if you don't hand him a fishing pole, he will never be able to fish. And it's just that, like, people don't need us to give them fish. People need us to hand them the freaking pole. Like, we just need it. That's really what I think systems change in nonprofit work should be about. And unfortunately, I mean, we don't have to get into all of the reasons why we have this unhealthy colonial view of, philanthropy and everything, but people know how to help themselves. We just have to like help give them the means to get them there, because the means have been taken from them historically.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't heard that thing from Trevor Noah, but that's brilliant. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing I also want to pop in here is that, in our work specifically with messaging, we oftentimes think of externally facing or stakeholder facing messaging. And obviously that's important for a million reasons. But when people work with us, they find, wow, our team is so much more inspired, right? And it's the same thing with strengths-based communication. Is like, if you want your staff and your team and your volunteers to feel purpose, to feel fulfillment, to feel like they're really contributing to something amazing, and to solutions, right? Strengths-based communication is something we have to have it in every step of our communications. I'm curious from your perspective, like, how do we actually, like, strengths-based communication? That sounds great. Okay, we're all on board. How do you incorporate that into your work, both specifically and just in general? And then how does that lead to better outcomes when it comes to marketing and video marketing?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of like the best, like a solid example beyond like I can really easily point to like, oh, victim versus survivor language. So I think one specific example that I can think of from my work is one of the organizations I worked with is this really great outpatient support app for people who have struggled with their mental health and have sought inpatient support and are now like hoping to support themselves in an outpatient setting, and they have access to this app. And the videos that I created for them were specifically to teach people like coping mechanisms. And so to teach people, this is how you breathe. These are really simple yoga poses you can do. And the language was really important when we thought about like, okay, how are we going to instruct people? Because this isn't like, oh, this magical breathing technique is going to fix your anxiety. It was more with, these are a couple simple tools that might help you, that might support you in your work to be the person that you most want to be. And so just kind of this ground up, it's such a hard thing to like specifically point to, but it's just this sort of idea of like ground up support instead of this like top down language. Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something you said just absolutely resonated with me is, I think you said the person that you want to be. And when we talk about the journey of transformation, really, there's actually two journeys of transformation, not to get in the weeds, but there's the journey of accomplishment what am I going to achieve? But then it's also, who am I going to become? And everyone, whether it's your donor, whether it's a beneficiary that you're helping, whether it's just someone who wants to pick up, I have a wallet that's made from twice recycled paper, like everyone wants to be something. Everyone has an aspirational identity, we call it. And so our job as marketers and as communicators and as storytellers is to say, not, hey, look at how great our wallets or spatulas or our programs or whatever is. This is something that is going to empower you to be the person that you want to be, right? And that's how we create a vision for the better world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just giving people that freedom, and also just thinking about whether it's philanthropy or like, I grew up in a highly religious community, and I go back to like, I don't need to get started on some of the things there, but the idea of some people I saw that called themselves missionaries had this like top-down approach, and we're going to tell people these things, and then these other people that would actually go and be like, we want to learn from these communities and see what they have to teach us, in addition to like how we can help them, and how different that language felt to me even as a kid, and how the outcomes that led to. It's like we have something to learn from everybody, and unfortunately when we get into some of these spaces, we can have this idea that like, I'm the only one that knows, and it's like, well, you actually should be learning from all the communities that you're working with and empowering those people to have a space in your marketing. I don't know if that I got
Yeah, for sure.
there.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I totally relate. I grew up in a highly evangelical, super right-wing kind of environment. And so, without getting too deep into it, is like, religion could be a very beautiful thing, but what's the reason that turns like, what's the reason that turns a lot of people off from it? Right? What's the reason a lot of people leave the church? It's not say whether that's a good or a bad thing, but a lot of people do perceive and pick up on that fear-based messaging, or that really overly colonial, patriarchal-based messaging. This is stuff that increasingly just turns people off. And it's not the way that we need to be talking about things that are happening in the world and things that are happening in ourselves, right? That's one thing I think that is so beneficial about strengths-based communication, is that having a positive brand image, even today, is a way to differentiate your brand, right? If you see those like, what is it, the ASPCA commercials where there's like, tortured dogs or whatever. Imagine if like, you're an adoption shelter or something, and your message is all about how great these animals are and how like loving families are and things like that. You might be doing the exact same work, but your brand is going to stand out, right? And so even just having a positive brand image, something as simple as that, something as simple as the tone and the mood that we have in our communication, can really set us apart.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And also just handing the microphone to people that you're helping. I think that's a big, letting people speak for themselves and speaking for their own needs, instead of I'm speaking on behalf of this person, what I think that they want, is a big, it's a little harder to do with puppies, but we can find it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any like kind of real life examples or case studies of strengths-based communication in action?
I don't have any case studies. A lot of times I'm working with people that are I don't want to say a lot, maybe a lot more educated in this than me, who are working on like the script side of it, and I'm doing a lot more of the video work. So I can't think of any like specific case studies. I do know from feedback that I've received from clients that like with the one I brought up earlier with teaching people breathing techniques and yoga poses and everything like that, that they found that sort of content performed really, really well. And they actually like at one point sent me like, oh my gosh, my email's been blowing up with patients that have found this sort of content really, really helpful. And I think, that's some of these, especially because sometimes I work with HIPAA compliant organizations or organizations that are a little bit more like, I don't want to say behind closed doors, but like I don't get access to all. It's not like YouTube where I can like look through.
Yeah.
But the language that I've got back from a lot of my clients is very, very supportive, strength based.
I love that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this a little bit before our conversation. I was thinking, what are some like well-known examples we can kind of use to make this tangible? And I think we're all familiar with like the ASPCA and like PETA, the animal cruelty, and like I went through a vegan phase. Like I support these things, but there are definitely like I don't know, like, it's not that I don't support the mission of the ASPCA, but I always turn the channel. You know what I mean? And we always know, like, you know, ADT and like security companies and insurance is always like, look at all these things that could go wrong. And again, there is a time to talk about what's at stake, right? That's a crucial, non-negotiable part of our messaging. We have to know what's at stake. But to constantly drill into that, right, is tough. On the converse, I thought of two great examples. One, I think, is the Boys and Girls Club of America. And I love in their messaging, instead of talking about, hey, here's all the risks and challenges that young people face, they emphasize like, hey, at the Boys and Girls Club, when people go through our programs, people get involved in our community, there's kind of side effects of success: academic achievement, character development, leadership, right? Just community building, things like that. Feeding America as well, an organization I used to volunteer with, is food insecurity, something that's close to my heart. A lot of times you just hear about starving people in America and poor, impoverished people, kind of the weak and the needy. And I love with Feeding America's messaging, they really focus on the resilience and the determination of individuals and families that they serve. And so I think those are some good examples that people can kind of latch onto, you know, go through some of their marketing materials and just think about commercials you've seen, be like, oh, that is what strengths-based communication can look like.
Yeah. Yeah. Another really good example, and I think we've connected on this before, is the book Braiding Sweetgrass. I don't know if you, I think we've talked about this before. But I think about a lot about, yeah, it's so good. But I think a lot about this book because I think that, like, I'm very involved in the climate space as well. And I read a lot of things that just make me, again, you want to turn the channel, you're tired and you're overwhelmed and you just kind of go in this panic mode. And especially for me, my guard always goes up. If anyone's ever trying to scare me, like you mentioned ADT, I'm always like, they are trying to manipulate me right now. If they're trying to scare me, they're actively trying to manipulate me. And so books like, or stories like Braiding Sweetgrass, the way that she told it, not as like this big scary, this is what's going to happen if we don't take action. And she was very clear throughout the book, but instead it was a love story and like made you fall in love with the natural world. And for me personally, it made me rethink, we're rewilding our back couple acres. And it made me rethink, instead of like going through with my chainsaw and just cutting everything down that I didn't want there, it made me rethink, okay, what role do each of these organisms play, and how can I listen to this world in a more sustainable, effective way, instead of this really negative top-down way of looking at the world. And I think we just need to make people fall, I mean, it sounds cheesy and woo-woo, but fall in love with the world a little bit more. And I think that that's the best way to market. I know that's what I want to watch when I turn on my TV. I don't want to, you know, just be sad and depressed and upset. I don't get motivated. I just go and like go into a little cocoon of my blankets when I see that.
Yeah. I mean, who ever watches the news and then is finished and is like, oh my God, I'm ready to make a change? Like, no, you're like, holy shit, that sucks, you know?
It sucks. And unfortunately, it's really, and I mean, it's as like, I'm the oldest sister of, so I've got 5 younger siblings, and it's really affecting the mental health of like Gen Zers. There's a rise in smoking. I mean, everyone talks about vaping, but the part of the reason is a lot of Gen Z, they're so depressed and overwhelmed that they're like, I'm not going to make it to 60 anyway, so I might as well make these unhealthy decisions. And it's heartbreaking to watch. And it's like, well, how can you not feel that as a 20-year-old turning on the news? Like, how can you not feel that way?
You're absolutely right. Quick side note, I'm sure I've asked it. Have you ever listened to the audiobook of Braiding Sweetgrass?
No, I have actually was just talking to my sister yesterday because she hasn't read it yet, and she's an audiobook person. I was like, when you listen to it, because I think you had mentioned to me about like how lovely her voice is.
Yeah, Robin Kimmer is like the most incredible, first of all, incredible author, incredible human, and just incredible audiobook narrator as well. Like, yeah, she's
I'll have to re-listen to it. I like her so much. I have like over here on my second monitor, I have a picture of her like hugging a tree, literally. And I look at it when I'm feeling sad, and it makes me feel better about life. Yeah.
Emma, between this and your chainsaw, I feel like I'm just reconnecting with my Midwestern roots right now. So I don't know how I feel about that, but
it's great.
Cool. As we kind of start to wrap up the conversation, I think a lot of people are on board with video marketing, with strengths-based communication, with all this kind of stuff. I want to talk about some steps and some best practices that people can take to make it effective and to work it into the digital strategy that they already have. And so I know something you mentioned before was like looking at creative briefs and stuff like that. I don't know if that's where you want to start, but what do you feel like are some steps that nonprofits and social impact businesses can take to do this effectively?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll probably start first with like kind of if you don't want to go hire someone ideas, and then if you're going to hire someone creative brief. Is that okay if I start there?
Absolutely.
Okay, so first, my thought is if you are wanting to get into video marketing as an organization and you are not certain if you're ready to hire someone yet, I would look at what does your current team have? What can your current team do sustainably? So is it post once a day? Is it post twice a day? Is it posting once a week? Like figuring out something that's sustainable. Don't just say, I'm going to post on TikTok once a day and then not do that. Figure out something that's sustainable. Figure out where you're going to post those videos if you are going to do video, and focus on just 1 to 2 platforms. And then find a regular cycle that you can check your metrics and review your metrics. And especially if you're a team of 1 like me, I just have to look at my metrics and be like, you kind of messed that up there. But if you're a team of a couple people, make it kind of fun. Get yourself a cup of coffee and look at your metrics and do that, whether that's once a week, bi-weekly, once a month, and really start to pay attention to those and start to build that slowly in a way that's sustainable. Also, define what you want people to do when they get done watching your video. The big thing that I always say is like, how do you want people to feel when they're watching the video? And then after they get done, what do you want them to do? Do you want them just to follow you so they can remain educated and you're just kind of building that like know, like, trust aspect of your business? Or are you wanting them to go over to your website? Are you wanting them to make a donation? Get really clear on what those key performance indicators, your KPIs, are for this video plan. And then when you get into your metrics meeting, track that. Are you seeing more donation dollars? Are you seeing more awareness through more followers? Are you seeing more people signing up for your email list? Whatever that looks like for you, get really, really clear about it and track that, because maybe video isn't right for your organization. Maybe that's not the best way to communicate it. And you want to know that before your team spends a ton of time and money delving into that. And then going along with that, don't expect you're going to make a massive shift in less than 3 to 6 months. Stick with that schedule for 3 to 6 months. That's why I want it to be sustainable. And that's why I want people to focus on what that they can do sustainably, even if everyone's like, post once a day. If you can only post twice a week, that's better than not doing it at all. And do that sustainably. Do it for 3 to 6 months and see where you are at the end of those 3 to 6 months. And if you can't say, oh my goodness, we've had, this many hundreds of people get into our email list, or this many more donation dollars, or this many, whatever that key performance indicator looks like, then it's time for you to reassess and say, is video really the area that we want to focus on? So that's kind of like, if you don't want to hire someone, that's my recommendations.
That's super valuable.
Thanks. And then if you do want to hire someone, I'm just going to go through what I like to see when I get a creative brief from an organization. I took some notes beforehand, so if I look down looking at my notebook. So a couple things that I like to see. One is that key performance indicator that I mentioned earlier. You don't have to frame it as key performance indicator. Tell me your goals. Tell me what you want this video to do. If I'm going into an organization and they are like, we want to create a video, but they have no idea what it wants to do, that's a big red flag for me, because I don't want people spending money on me that is gonna be wasted, especially if it's a nonprofit and an issue that I really care about. The other thing is team size. This might not seem super important, but when I'm writing up a timeline for a project, I always ask the team size, because if you have one person reviewing a video, because usually when you're doing a video, you'll get a rough cut, you'll get a second cut, and you'll get a final cut. So you'll be able to see a couple versions of the video before you release that final cut. And if you have a 10-person team, getting feedback from all of those people is going to take a lot longer than if you have a 1-person team. So when I build out a schedule between the rough cut and the second cut, if it's a 1-person team, I'm like, we can get that done in like 3 days. We can get at it. But if it's a 10-person team, I'm like, it's gonna take like a week or 2 at least for everybody to look at that video and everybody to say their points and everybody to, do their discussion about the font choice, because that's always what people want to discuss. So that's team size, goals for the project, and then budget. I know budget can be a really scary thing, and you don't need to give an actual number. Like, you don't need to give a specific, like, we want to spend, $5,000 on this project, but give a range. Especially for if you're working with 4 good freelancers, sometimes if I'm really passionate about the issue, I will take something that's a little under what I would normally charge because I want to work on it and it's fulfilling to me, but I have to have an idea of what that budget is before I can make that commitment. Because if I'm going in thinking, okay, I might make, 3/4 of my hourly rate. And then people are thinking, oh no, it'll be $100 for this, 5-minute video that'll take me 2 or 3 weeks to work on. That's a completely different discussion. That's more of a volunteer basis than an actual paid basis. So that's very, very helpful to have. And then, and that also, as a creative, a lot of times I'll offer a couple different price points, and that allows me to offer a couple different price points, one of which is hopefully I always try to have one that's in budget, and then a couple others that are maybe like above or below that budget. And then, last one is if you know where you want that video to be posted to, because that really affects the effort that goes into editing the video, what size the video is, whether it's a vertical video, a horizontal video, a square video, and also the length of the video. So like a YouTube video is very different than a TikTok video. And knowing where you want those videos to live, and if it's we want to have a YouTube video, like we want to have a YouTube podcast and then have a couple different cuts for TikTok, that's a different project than if we want one video on LinkedIn. So listing out where you want all those places or where you want that video to go is also really, really helpful when on the creative side, I'm trying to make up budgets and timelines and give you an idea of what it's like to work with me. So that's kind of, is it helpful? Do you want me to read those off one more time?
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think a lot of people are, they get down with the strategy and, they start to work on it. And then when it comes time to do like the detail kind of, Jesus. Someone brought a chihuahua to the office.
I'm not hearing it. So.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. This is noise cancellation. It's phenomenal.
Good.
Okay. So Crisp AI, by the way, is a free trial. Anyway, not affiliated. I think a lot of people, when they get down to the nitty gritty, like logistical kind of work, like, they don't know what to include, and you lose a lot of the excitement there and you get a lot of the drag there. And so I think that was super valuable, just to be like, we need to be thinking about not only where does this go, but what's the aspect ratio and like, things like that. I think that was just super valuable in terms of what actually goes into this. And so we can keep the momentum high and keep it moving.
And one other thing, if you don't feel like if you as a team don't feel qualified to know where to post that video, having those goals and telling the creative that you're meeting with, like, we don't know this is what we want to do, but we don't know where to do it. That's completely fine too. But I need clarity, creatives need clarity. So that way we know where we need to make recommendations and we need to consult and where we just need to be a creative support. And that's helpful to have those areas defined.
Sweet. That's really cool. One thing I want to add here is that I don't know if you confirm whether you see this in your own work with your clients or not, but for me, when people talk about video marketing, it's almost like they want to open up a brand new channel of marketing. And they're like, this is a whole new department we have to create, a video marketing. I always say, just work video into what you're already doing. If you already have a lot of social media efforts, just, grab a 90-second selfie video and post that one of the days. Or if you're already working on your SEO and your blog strategy, just create a video that kind of, talks through, gives an additional medium for consuming that information, put it there. And so video doesn't have to be a whole new thing. It can be something you work into what you already have. Is that kind of what you mean when you say like start small?
Yes. Yeah. Start small. And I totally agree. Work into what you already have. Don't make it this big thing that you have over here that's separate from everything you're doing. Just roll it into your marketing. I like how you said that. A lot of times what I do on LinkedIn, I post a lot of pictures. And then once or twice a week, I'll take a quick video and I'll post that. And that's pretty much the extent of my video marketing. And it works.
Cool. I love that. In the interest of time and on the note of what works, I want you to give, from your expertise, what is one action step that people listening can take? And I want you to give one action step for each of 3 people. One is for people that are just starting out, have never done it before. What's one step that they can take? One, if it's someone who they've done it for a little bit, but they haven't really seen the results, what's an action step they can take? And what about people who are already successful, they want to take it to the next level? What's an action step they can take?
Now, question before I answer this, is this a nonprofit that's just starting out as a nonprofit or just starting out in video strategy?
Let's say just starting out with video strategy.
Okay. Just starting out, I would definitely recommend what I said earlier is kind of starting to think through what it is you actually want to change with your video strategy. And then I would recommend try posting like once a week. Pick a platform. I would recommend TikTok. I think it's really easy to get feedback on TikTok. Instagram is really hard to break into right now. So I would caution against Instagram. Not that you can't do it, not that it's not a worthy platform, but it's just really, really hard to break in and it might be a little discouraging. And just commit to trying to post once a week. Something that's really simple is just in the morning, grab your phone and go, hey, so-and-so, like, hey, everybody, this is what I'm working on today. And this is what I'm really excited about with my week, and post that. Just put like a little bit of music behind it and you're good to go. And then a nonprofit, sorry, I'm actually looking at your notes that you sent. Not that we work off of notes. This all lives in our head.
Totally.
Yeah. Taking, if you have a video strategy and it's you have no results, take a minute to like go into the metrics. I know I keep going on about metrics. Go into the metrics and look at, do you have one video that maybe has a little bit more shares and saves are what I would focus on. I wouldn't focus as much on views. And look at the ratio of like, did 100 people view it, but 50 people saved it? That's awesome. That's really, really good. Versus if, 100 people viewed it and like one person liked it, or one person shared it, or one person saved it. And start to dig into those and dig into where are people leaving the video? What are the links to the video? And try to focus on what is working. Even if what's working is you had a video with 50 views and 5 people shared it, or 5 people commented on it. And even if it's just something that small, try to identify what was it about that video that resonated with people. Were you maybe a little bit more authentic? Like I said, for me earlier, what I realized was if my partner was holding the cat, he's a big dude and it looks cute when he holds a cat, that like the positive feedback for those videos was way higher when it's just me rambling around my swamp by myself, because they're little nature vlogs. So focus on what's working and build on that. And someone who's really wanting to take it to the next level, I would recommend then maybe that's the time where you go hire a professional. Look around. You don't have to hire someone full-time. I think a lot of people immediately go to, now we need a full-time video person. I'm a big fan of freelancers. Obviously, I am one. I think it allows people to hire someone at a little bit of a lower price point than if you're hiring someone full-time. And another option is an agency, to look at maybe working with an agency. And a lot of people will do, like, I offer free consultation calls. So even if and a lot of other people will do that as well. Even if you just reach out to a couple freelancers or a couple agencies you might like to work with, and just like, we want to meet and talk to you about whether or not we think that, we can work together. And then just be aware that people do try to sell to you. People are, always trying to sell. So take everything they say with a grain of salt, like you would with, like, I don't want to say a car salesman, but like a little bit, treat it like a salesman. But just lay out what you've been doing, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and just get a little bit of feedback and then make a decision from there if you want to hire someone.
It's super valuable. On the note of you being a freelancer, where can people go to find you to learn more about your work?
Oh, yeah. So my website is emma@chickadee.com. And then my LinkedIn is also Emma@Chickadee. So, or Emma Parker. You can find me on LinkedIn, and then my website. And then, this is bad because I actually don't know my TikTok handle. I think it's also Emma@Chickadee, but if you go to my LinkedIn or my website, you can find my TikTok as well. My TikTok's more focused on just, honestly, like I mentioned, we're rewilding our back couple of acres. And so every once in a while, I'll go back there and post a video of like the beaver dam that has like sprung up on our creek and stuff like that. So it's a lot more nature oriented and just kind of things that I like to post about versus more business oriented.
I love that. It's a good look into who you are, what makes you tick. So when I upload this to YouTube, I'll put some links down in the description, and people can find it there. I want to end by saying that, a lot of us know that video marketing is something that we should be doing, but really it's something that we can't be affording to miss out on as time goes on. And so one of my mentors always says, knowledge is knowing, wisdom is doing. And so don't let this be just another piece of content that you listen to or you watch. You got to take action, because the people that we serve, they deserve it. Emma, thank you so much for our conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Zach. It was so nice chatting with you.
Yeah, of course.